Larry Love, when is the next R&B Mostly? So, what is R&B Mostly? Back in 2015, yours truly, DJ Larry Love, was sitting on a couch and I realized that people thought R&B was dead. So I created a microblog to show people, obviously classic R&B, and to also show people R&B artists that exist today. Fast forward to 2019, we created our first event in Jacksonville, Florida. We've been kind of moving ever since. The idea is 80% R&B, 20% whatever else we feel like playing. Hip hop, soca, reggae, twerk music, whatever gets the people moving. So it's kind of an event flipped on its head. R&B Mostly is an event. It is a microblog. It is a place where we promote R&B music, good music, and we make mixes to show people, show that style of music in its fullest form. So my name is Larry Love, DJ Larry Love, and I am the founder and creator of R&B Mostly. You can find us on Instagram at R&B Mostly and on Facebook at R&B Mostly. And the N is not the actual sign of and, it's the letter N. So R&B Mostly, Facebook, Instagram. My name is DJ Larry Love.
My name is Christina Curates, and I am the curator of Sunday Vibes, powered by the Groove Sweet Jacks. You will hear neo soul, R&B, and an eclectic sound throughout. It's definitely mellow vibes, perfect for a Sunday evening. Catch the mix Sundays at 9 p.m. and Mondays at 8 a.m. on the Sound of Duval. Hope you enjoy.
The Groove Sweet, Groove Sweet, Groove Sweet, Groove Sweet, Groove Sweet.
Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Love Reigns, and I am here to talk about fly socks and tees. Congratulations, first of all, Mr. Al, Pete, and the whole MPN family for 7 years of just awesomeness. I'm so happy to be a part of the MPN network. The Random Thoughts of Rain podcast is a podcast that I've been sitting on. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and it actually came about from conversations between Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin that I saw on YouTube. And I said, man, it would be really, really cool to be able to do something like that and have those kinds of conversations with today's artists and today's creatives. So that's what the Random Thoughts of Rain podcast is all about. I have an opportunity to talk to some of the creatives that I've been blessed to work with over the years, where we stand as creatives, so it's an amazing time. I have such awesome conversations with all of these creatives, and just stay tuned because you never know who I'm going to talk to next. Right now. Hey, what's up, everybody? Thank you for tuning in to the Random Thoughts of Rain podcast, the live edition. This is installment number 2. Last time I tried to include it in the episode, and it was just, my numbers got all mixed up. So whatever number I said the last time, ignore that, okay? I just flashy thinged you all to forget that. This is episode 2 of the Random Thoughts of Rain podcast, the live edition, and I am truly honored to be joined by the one, the only Hope McMath.
Hey, love.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm great.
Thrilled to be here.
I'm so thrilled to have you here. So obviously I know who you are, but tell the people, for the people who may not know, if you're in Jacksonville, you don't know who Hope McMath is. First of all, you sleeping. You should know who Hope McMath is, number 1. Number 2, if you know anything that is anything in terms of advocacy and arts advocacy in Jacksonville and surrounding areas, you should definitely know who Hope McMath is. She is a champion of not only the arts community, but the Jacksonville community as a whole. So please tell them who you are and tell them why you're dope.
Ugh, I don't know about dope, but hey, y'all, I'm really excited to be here. So I'm Hope. I am a native of Jacksonville, describe myself typically as an artist, an educator, an organizer, a curator, a lover of human beings, I try to make art as often as I can, but spend probably more of my time trying to amplify the work of other people. Try to help in community when I can. I'm a wife to a pretty badass artist and educator in his own right. Yeah, that's the gist.
Yeah, that's why you're dope.
Mm,
You're dope. Own it.
I appreciate that.
So let's start from the beginning. Like,
Yeah.
how did you get into art? Was that something that started at childhood, or how did you get into it?
It did. I was always that.
Yeah.
I was always making art.
Yeah.
You know, I was the kid in elementary school who always did the billboards, in the
Nice.
classroom. And so I always knew I was going to do something in the arts. I mean, I didn't necessarily understand what that was, but it was like always a part of who I was.
Yeah.
My grandparents, who actually lived in Ohio, also loved going to like public parks and public museums.
Nice.
So when I was in tow with them, whether it was in Ohio or here, we spent a lot of time in places like that. So that had a big impact too, for sure.
That's awesome. So what was, becoming, creating and doing your art and creating your art, what gave you the notion, or when did you feel like this is something that I want to share? Like, I don't want to just keep this to myself. I want to share this with the community and with the world.
That was sort of a slow evolution, I think. I don't think it was something I was really always very conscious of. I mean, art making for me, for the early years where I started to use the terminology of being an artist, that felt like a real solo kind of thing, going through school to be an artist. You had that little community, but it was still pretty insular, and I was okay with that for whatever reason. I just was. And when I ended up in my role at the Cummer Museum, that's when like the world sort of opened up, and I started to recognize there's something bigger than just being holed up in my own studio. And maybe something that would feed me to an even greater extent. And so, I mean, it was slow. It's not like I just sort of one day was like, ooh, let's like take on community work, right? Or like, let's do something that's bigger than I am. It really wasn't that dramatic or that exciting of a wake up.
I gotcha. So you mentioned the Cummer, right? So transitioning from the Cummer and then opening up Yellow House.
Yeah.
What was that experience like?
It was frightening.
Yeah.
It was really fun. It was really challenging, right? So, I'm this old-fashioned kind of girl in that, I worked for the same place for 22 years.
Wow.
Like, who does that?
Yeah.
In the city where I was born and raised, right? And so wasn't necessarily part of my plan, but that's just sort of how it worked out, And so when I leapt out of there with the intention of doing something closer to the ground, to not be in charge of a big organization, it took me a while. It took me a year first to lick some wounds and, deal with all that, and then to like try to put into action what I really wanted to see happen. And so Yellow House was really born of that. And, I wanted to do something that felt important, but I also wanted to shape the kind of life I wanted to live. I didn't want to be sometimes an artist, sometimes an activist, sometimes an educator, sometimes a curator. It was like these divisions between those things just didn't make sense anymore to me, And so it was like, how do I shape a life where that all becomes one thing? And how might that play out outside of my own existence and into community? And so that's really kind of the premise of Yellow House.
Yeah. I heard Issa Rae mention, say, a multi-hyphenate.
Yes.
I was like, oh, that's fancy. Yes, I'm a
multi-hyphenate, right? It's sort of like, it's one of those things, titles or how we define and describe, which just so quickly, all you have to do is throw out one or two words and all of a sudden you lose the ability almost to shape how you want to define yourself, because then all of a sudden everybody else owns that narrative.
True.
And so for me, I'm just really interested in blurring the edges between all that.
Yeah.
And Yellow House tries to do that. It's like, are we an art organization? Yes. Are we a social service organization? Yes. Do we do food delivery? Yeah.
Yes.
You know, it's like people sometimes walk into Yellow House and they'll be like, okay, I don't really understand. Like you've got a truck dropping off mattresses, but like there's this amazing art exhibition by this group of local artists that focuses on, you know, Black women and Black motherhood, you know, and then you've got a bunch of kids drawing with crayons out on the driveway. It's like, what are you trying to do here?
What is
you know,
this place?
What is this place? You know, and I'm like, and my answer is always, it's just all that.
Yeah. Is yellow your favorite color?
No. I mean, it is now. I guess I need to change my answer, right? No, the color chosen for Yellow House. So when we decided, so we've got a little building over in North Riverside in the Cork Arts District, and this building had sat empty for like 3 years. And I was originally going to move into Cork.
Mm-hmm.
But Cork was too closed. I was like, if I'm going to interact with community, like this is going to be tough. And so I was like, what about that building over there? They're like, you don't want that. That place is a pit. I'm like, let's go in. So we boarded up. We go in. I was like, this is perfect. Like, this is exactly right. And so I signed the lease for it. And then I started meeting some of the neighbors right around there, really focusing on the residential part of the neighborhood. Mm-hmm. And every time I met somebody and they were like, so where are you moving into? And I was like, you know, the place on the corner of King and Phyllis. They're like, oh, the Yellow House. Well, the problem was it wasn't yellow.
Oh.
So I heard this like 4 times in one day.
Yeah.
People call it the Yellow House. And I was like, all right, who am I? Who am I to say it's not the Yellow House? So I go home and I'm telling my husband this story. And he goes, well, that's so interesting because you have a yellow house in your life. And I was like, you know, that is why I didn't even recognize it. But so my grandfather, who was sort of the center of my orbit for a long time, definitely the best dude in my life growing up, he always had a yellow house. He lived in the same house for 65 years. Wow. And it was the same shade of yellow all 65 years. Every time he repainted it, same damn yellow. Shade of yellow. Never changed it, never altered it. It never went mustard. It never went butter. It was just the same shade of yellow. And so I thought, you know, that is true. That is weird, right? Like I had this yellow house. It was like where I had my political awakening and where like, you know, some of my deepest love, you know, was sort of experienced. And so, I don't know, all that happened in 24 hours. So it made sense for it to be Yellow House.
Divine.
It really was. And then the next day, you know, I wake up and I sort of say, this is what it needs to be. And my husband goes, you know who else had a yellow house? And Vincent van Gogh, the painter, when he decided to give up all his other gigs, he was trying to be a minister and a gallery owner and all this stuff.
He was trying to be a multi-hyphenate.
He was. He absolutely was. And he was sucking at it. He was terrible with it. I mean, he was just poor as dirt, couldn't figure any of it out. You know, all of it was making him mad. And he decided to commit full time to being an artist and to create a center for other artists to come to. So he moved to the south of France and he leased a building and it was yellow and he called it Yellow House.
Wow.
And he did one painting of it. And so it was like all those things sort of come together. It's like the neighbors were calling the house yellow. It needed to be yellow, right? Wow. I had a yellow house in my world that was like really important as a symbol of some things. And if Van Gogh can have a yellow house, why not?
Yeah. Oh man, that's awesome. See, I love hearing stories like because I never knew.
I know, right?
You know, I thought that it was yellow. It was like when you got it, it was yellow. So I was like,
no. But then it did mean I had to paint it yellow, right? Like, you know, it was going to be a little weird if I called it Yellow House and it wasn't yellow. So that's where that all came from.
Wow, that's awesome. I love like. I honestly, to be completely honest, I had never really experienced, like I've gone to like Mosh and I've gone to, Mocha, and I've gone to museums, but I never really had an intimate experience until I went to Yellow House and it was at Aaron's opening. And it was just so
good.
I think between her art and then the space and then how it was set up and then it was just and then you being who you are and encompassing everything under one roof, that was, to me, that just felt really, really powerful, right? So insert pandemic and things happen and the lid is completely blown off of a lot of things that admittedly I can admit for myself we were complicit about, right, in terms of the society and the world around us.
That's right.
You have been such a champion for so many people, so many underserved populations, and so many folks who are just hurting and sometimes forgotten about, right? How did that happen? Like what just to be completely real and honest, I feel like there's a lot of people who have been complicit, but unknowingly complicit and unknowingly content with how we were progressing and changing as far as a world. But I think there were some people who were just like, well, I'm a white woman or I'm a white man. That doesn't concern me. That sucks that this is happening to this community or this group of people. But I can't do anything about that, So you've chosen to, even before all of this, to be a champion for minorities. How did that start, and what made you say, you know what, I have to have a voice. I have to say something. I have to help these groups of people because if I don't, who will?
There's a lot in there.
Yeah.
And part of it, that too, has been an evolution, and I still consider myself very complicit in the things that are not right. I grew up in a really diverse neighborhood. It shaped me. My schools were that way. It was just how I lived. I actually never really moved in an all white space until I went to college here locally, and it surprised me, right? It was so obvious that there was something wrong and a lot missing. But part of it has literally come since I made the commitment to do Yellow House and made a commitment to live more authentically for myself versus for an institution, and for community versus an institution. I mean, I was really fortunate when I was at the Cummer Museum that there was so much deep learning that happened there. But part of that deep learning was also like, I can't do the real work, the real messy, awkward, impactful work within an institution like that. And so, and 1 week after Yellow House opened was when Hurricane Irma came swooping through Jacksonville. And through activist friends of mine, Reginald Gundy and Chris Kiernan and Christina Kittle, and there was a group of like 5 of us that got together because a call had come out from the Ken Knight Drive neighborhood out on the north side off of Moncrief, where a week after the storm, nobody had been there. And when I mean nobody, I mean Red Cross hadn't shown up, JEA hadn't shown up. And this was a neighborhood that had experienced extreme flooding, hip-high flooding. And so going into that space, I had to really reckon with what did that mean, especially as a white woman, moving in a neighborhood that was not my neighborhood and thinking that I could do anything about what was needed. And so, but what I recognized very quickly is that what I could do is stand with people, listen closely to what their needs were, and try to make connections to resources. So that was really, my first big experience in recognizing that I didn't have a lead role to play, but I had an important role to play as an amplifier. And so And that was also really messy. I made so many mistakes. I mean, I just stepped in it on the regular, often because of just ego and who I am as a person who lives within a world shaped by white supremacy. It's like, it's so challenging to strip that off. But it's the challenge we all must take up. I mean, there's just such a sense of urgency that I have around it anymore that it's just not an option.
Yeah.
It's not an option to not do it. And thankfully, I've created a situation for myself where I can do and say whatever the hell I want to.
Yeah.
I don't have to ask permission from anybody to say this is the work we're going to do, or guess what, we're now going to have a produce stand up in front of Yellow House for the neighborhood because that's what the neighbors have told me they need.
Right.
Not because I thought it was important, but because it has bubbled up as a need. And so, people are like, but you're an art organization. Well, so now I'm an art organization with a produce stand out front, with free vegetables, And then it became like, now how am I going to get all these free vegetables? So I trade my labor.
Yeah. Wow.
I go and work on a farm in Hastings.
Wow.
1 day a week. And trade for that labor is a truck full of food.
Wow.
And I truck half of it to Kennite Drive and the other half to Mixontown.
That's awesome.
So it's really not awesome.
Yeah.
I mean, it's the basic stuff.
Right.
I mean, this is basic stuff. There is and so I bristle a bit and become uncomfortable when we treat such acts as extraordinary.
Right.
But that's where we're at, right?
Yeah. And it's you're right. I mean, and it's just you get to a point where you're like, okay, I want to help everybody.
And you also can't do that.
And you can't help everybody. You can't do everything.
That's right. Well, and you have to continue to feed yourself, and that's a real balancing act, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like what is it that you need to be the creative, productive, loving human being you need to be, which requires rest on the regular, and try to be responsive when there's a community need that you think you might be able to play some sort of role in. And I happen to believe that artists and creative types know how to solve these problems.
Yeah.
I have no doubt.
Yeah.
I have no doubt. If we could just clear out places like City Hall and fill it up with Love Rains and Al Pete and MJ Baker and all these other brilliant people that we know, it'd be a very different world.
Yeah, I think so too. And it's just I don't know, this time has been really, really tough, right? And I know like I've had so many bouts of I already stopped watching the news. I was like, I'm not gonna be on social media. I'm not going to,
How's that going for you?
It actually has been great because, to a certain extent, because of everything that I do, I have to be on social media. But then for the most part, I love taking breaks. I love answering my phone when I feel like answering it, or not answering it, or just being in my little bubble and being in my bat cave, because I need those things. I had the crazy notion earlier in my career that I had to do everything. And on top of doing everything, I had to help everybody. You know what I mean? And then, of course, what ends up happening is you get burned out.
Yeah.
And you start making mistakes, and you start getting in, crazy situations or crazy relationships, and then your health starts to affect you, like all these different things, right? So how have you been able to do that and to stay? Because I know that what I love about you is your transparency, about everything. And I know that this year, especially with like the Black Lives Matter movement and things like that, I can see it in your face sometimes, because like I know you want to say so much and do so much. So how do you take care of hope, so that you can continue the work?
Sometimes not well. right? But I step away for chunks of time. I find I'm really bad at the discipline required to take care of myself well on the daily, right? So what I tend to do is do it in these like I take doses of like I'm like hardcore, push, do the work. And then it's like, oh, I got to go away for 4 or 5 days, y'all. Like I've got to shut down, no phone, disappear into the woods, like literally. But for me, that has just worked for me. But that's me, you know. But I can recharge. I can rest and recharge pretty well if I've got those kinds of chunks of time. My home and my garden and my studio is a nest that I let very few people in. I've always been really protective of it. It's a really modest place, but it's glorious and beautiful, and it's, you know, it's an escape. And so I take that really seriously, like caring for my nest, you know. And so sometimes that means I have to take time out and just get my hands in the dirt, right? So that my key lime tree is producing and, you know, so the birds are happy and, you know, and so if that's happening, I'm usually in a pretty good place. If I'm making art on the regular, my own art, because I do an awful lot to create space for other people to do their work, to do their art. And for a lot of years, really all 7 years that I served as director at the Cummer, I didn't make a single work of art. I didn't have it. I just didn't have the energy or the focus for it, or the motivation maybe. But now I really do have a much better sort of discipline and desire to consistently make art, and know that a lot of what I make is shit. I mean, it's you know, and that's okay. Like I've also taken the pressure off of like that everything I put my hands on
has to be perfect,
has to have any value to it beyond me just creating it, beyond the process behind it, and that's freeing. I mean, that's incredibly freeing.
Yeah, it is.
To not always see it as a commodity, but to see it as a process for keeping myself whole. Yeah. Right. So I've just tried to understand that better, and sometimes I do it all right, and sometimes I forget all of this, you know, and I get way too, as we all do, too caught up in the flurry and the chaos, and find myself sometimes being not at all helpful to other people.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to what you're saying about, you know, like picking, trading labor for the fruits and vegetables, right? Because even stuff like that, you know, that could be, even though you're doing it for the community and for the those two communities, it's still time with yourself. Oof. It's still time where you can reflect and, you know, and still feel good in that work, right? How do we normalize, like you said, about not making acts like that amazing or, you know, such a big deal? How do we get to that point where we're no longer, you know, where we're looking at stuff like that as just a normal day-to-day or a decent thing to do, you know?
Right. And so, you know, going out to this farm, and by the way, it's run by this amazing group of women. It's all women on this farm. They call themselves farm hers.
Ah, okay.
And they're amazing. And it is just beautiful being out there, and it kicks my butt, and it's hard and sweaty and nasty and dirty, and it's just great. I mean, part of it is the larger picture, right? Is this move away from capitalism as the end all be all, right? That our reason for existing is to be the cog in somebody else's wheel. And that's how that's how the system is set up. That's how we've all been trained to look at the world. And, you know, a lot of us are doing a lot of work to both unlearn, unwind, and try to undo all that, right? Yeah. So in the meantime, until we can burn all that down, we have to learn how to just sort of bake that into our week, right? Like, what are those things that bring us joy? Yeah. feed us, make us whole, make us more productive for the work we want to do and that we want to do with the community. And we have to start talking about that as if that is essential to what we do, right? I mean, I make no apologies for the fact that I go out to the farm once a week, and I've got other gigs and clients that I work with. And when they need me on that Tuesday, I say, no, my work on Tuesdays is on the farm, you know? And people just start to, they're curious about it. They think it's odd. They're not sure how it all fits into everything. Some people might even question, like, and we're working with this woman for, you know, what's she doing? Like, is this even smart? Like, what is she doing? So I think we each have to play a role in normalizing it by talking about it as if it is normal. Yeah, and being, to your point, you know, this idea of transparency, I in part do that. One, it's just how I am. But I also think there's value. I appreciate when I see other people's practice in its fullest form. The vulnerability of it, the mistakes in it, the stuff that's sort of strange and doesn't tend to match up. Like, I get really excited when I see people doing that. You know, it gives me a lot of motivation to, like, oh yeah, you know, we've all been learned to, like, you pick a path and you stick on it. And it's like, but what if this path over here is also interesting, you know? And so I think the more we can show other people that it is normal, you know, I mean, it's a slow burn though.
Yeah, it is. I mean, and it's just, to your point, I think it's important, you know what I mean? Because it's, we are at, if this year has shown us nothing else, it has shown us that things cannot go back to how they were. It just simply cannot. Right? And the only way that we can ensure that things don't go back to how they were is if we are honest. And if we do talk about the things that we've always been afraid to talk about, like racism and you know, police brutality and all the things that came to a head this year.
Yes, it did.
You know, so we have to. You know what I mean? And
we do. And you know, you bring up something so important. I was just thinking about this earlier today, and I don't think it ever came into my consciousness until just now. There was an article or something that came out like just in the last day or so that showed that, like, and I'm going to get the numbers way wrong, but like 70% of Americans were behind the Black Lives Matter movement over the summer after George Floyd's murder, right? It was like a really high number. It was like impressive. And today it's like 40%. And when I heard those numbers, I thought, no, what the hell is that all about? But we know what that's about. We know what that's about. We know that in the heat of something, the bandwagon will drive by and people will jump right on it, right? And that's not to judge, because there's an entry point for everybody. But the fact that so quickly the support for that, the engagement in it is already falling, based on what? Based on the fact that we put language like defund the police on it? Is that what started making people nervous? Or is it just people so easily get distracted?
Yeah. I think it's a combination of things. I think, you know, from my viewpoint, I believe, which could be wrong. I feel like it's people are tired.
Yeah, people are tired.
I mean? And it's almost gotten to a point where, you know, we march for George Floyd, we marched for Breonna, we marched for Sandra, we marched for Tamir, we marched for Jordan, you know what I mean? Like, and like, how many more times? Like, I don't want to go to another march.
Right.
I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
I don't want to, you know, protest. I'm tired of doing it. I did that. You know what I mean? Now what? What do we do now? You know, so I think that we have to get to a point where, and I think this year is allowing us to do that, and it's allowing us space to do that. We were forced to do it. We're forced to deal with it.
That's right.
Because it just cannot go back to how it was. And I know for me, like, I'm tired. I'm just tired of the same shit.
Yeah.
You know, I'm tired of hearing another name. I'm tired of another hashtag. I'm tired of trying to find another avenue to get creative, to talk about the injustices.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But how much longer do we have to keep talking about
Well, you're right. At some point, action reigns supreme. And I also think the burden needs to shift off of the shoulders and the lives of the people who have been carrying this burden for too long.
Yeah.
And white people in particular who have started to pay attention to this and I think in decent numbers begin to reevaluate and hopefully begin to reckon, right, with all the crap we've been fed and the mistruths and the cover-ups, and there needs to be the weight needs to shift onto those shoulders, not to lead it, but to realize that without that component, without masses of people in every sector, in every kind of position, to evaluate what's going on around them and force change. And I mean, I hear you. My greatest hope during this time, because I do still have hope during this time, is that it is that moment for a radical shift, a reimagining, right? But that reimagining and putting it into practice can really only happen once we reckon with what's wrong. And I don't know. I feel the possibility of it.
Yeah, I do too. I feel oddly, I feel positive about the stuff that's going on, but it's necessary. It's necessary to have allies. You know what I mean? Because if you have, if you have an ally to the LGBT community, that no one's gonna listen to a lesbian to about anything when it comes to certain things, right? Or certain decision making things that are historically or normally set aside for heterosexuality, right? A lesbian, I was talking to a friend of mine, and I was like, there's a lot of things that I see as a lesbian that I want to say about things that I see in the homosexual community, but then it's like I know it won't be received,
right?
Because you're a lesbian, right? But if someone from inside that community, the privileged community, for lack of a better word, says something, then people are more prone to listen. So it's the same thing with the Black Lives Matter. You know what I mean? We've been yelling it for 300 plus years.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's clear that no one's listening, right? I mean, I think that, and of course, I don't feel like, there hasn't been change. I feel like there's a lot of things that have changed.
There has, but it's really easy to get satisfied and satiated with a very small meal. I mean, it's like, there's just so much to be done. And the work is hard, but the work can also be really joyful. I mean, there's incredible pain all around us, incredible pain and loss. But I think what we sometimes forget is that there is something just beautiful when you do start to see people sort of rowing in that same direction, right? Yeah. No matter how they came to it, like, part of me is like, movements fall apart so quickly when we judge too quickly, like how somebody's doing the work, or are they doing it the right way, or how did they enter the work, and
why you want to do it now?
Why are you doing it now? Why weren't you doing it 150 years ago? Well, and let me tell you, for a lot of people, they become afraid of the mistakes they're going to make when they enter the movement, and very quickly they're told what mistakes they're making. And some people just don't have the spine or the support around them to keep going, right? And so grace matters. If we want to be courageous, we have got to extend grace to ourselves, to the people closest to us, to people we don't know at all. We can't just always jump to the assumption that people are motivated by the wrong things or doing it in the wrong way, because who the hell am I to say how it should be done?
Yeah.
So, so I think, I don't know. I'm optimistic, maybe more so than I should be. I don't always sound it. I don't always look it. My art doesn't always express optimism. My art tends to be a channel for my rage. Thank God I'm an artist. I probably hurt somebody.
Yeah. Same.
But yeah, right?
Same.
Right? But you come off with such joy. I mean, watching you deliver the way you deliver, whatever it is, whether it's a podcast or, a spoken word piece, there's such power in your words and your message. But you embody like this magic that is seductive for people.
Ooh,
and
like you heard that, MJ? Seductive. You hear that, Pete?
But it is seductive,
Yeah.
and it pulls people in sometimes to places where they otherwise wouldn't go.
Yeah, I think a lot of that, a lot of that doesn't come without crying in the car
I hear you.
beforehand, or crying after the performance, or disappearing for a while and sitting in a corner, balled up, and shaking my fist at God, like. Mm-hmm. I don't want it. There's a lot of times where I don't want to I don't want to do the work sometimes. You know what I mean? And you touched on that a little bit, because it does become daunting and it becomes heavy. Mm-hmm. And then, when you feed into opinions and ridicule and things and naysayers, I'm still human.
Yeah, and that stuff hurts.
It does. It hurts. It hurts like hell, And so what I have to do is, when I always say that Love Reigns is an alter ego, because to me, I tap into Love Reigns because I have no choice but to do the work. You know what I mean? Like, how dare I sit on a gift that God gave me? Not gave me for me, but gave me for people. That gave me to give to people. It ain't about Taryn. It's not about Love Reigns. It's about what God instilled. This is the gift, right? Your gift is your gift. I'm not an artist. I'm not a visual artist. But I can draw a bomb-ass stick figure. I really can. But I can't do anything other than
Where's
that.
the prop? Where's the prop to make you draw that stick figure?
But, I stay in my lane, and it's like, it's not me, right? This is the gift that God gave me. This is my cost of living. My cost for living on this earth is the gift. And if I'm sitting on that gift, or I allow myself to fall into depression and fall into, imagine, I attempted suicide 3 times, 5 times. Imagine if I had done that. You know what I mean? That would have been a disappointment to God. You know what I mean? Because this is
loss for everyone else,
right? And but it's like, this is something that God gave me to gift to the world. So how dare I sit on that? How dare I allow anyone to treat me less than a God? How dare, you know what I mean? And that's for all of us. You are a God. I'm a God. MJ's a God. Al Peter's we are gods. Operating in this space together, and we just have to learn how to do it cohesively, not without mistakes,
right,
or not without disagreements,
right,
or things
right,
like that,
right.
But we have to first recognize our power. We have to recognize that we do have the ability to make a change, right? So I said all that to say this as we wrap up. You allowed yourself to be susceptible to a lot of things when you decided to step out on your own and truly live in your authentic self, right? There's power in that, right? And being someone who is a part of the community, a couple of the communities that you advocate for and on behalf of, right? I appreciate you. And I want to give you your flowers. I suck. I should have had real flowers. I didn't even think about it. Damn. I know. I didn't even think about it. Sorry.
Listen,
Allow me to give you your flowers, and I'm
seeing them and I'm smelling them. I am.
There we go.
I am. They are right
There we
here.
go.
They are
There
right
you go.
here.
They're your flowers. So thank you for everything that you do for us, because we need you, and I appreciate you. And if you don't hear it enough, know that I know that there's a ton of people out there who love you and appreciate you. So thank you. That's it.
Wow. Thank
Just
you.
thank you. Thank you for everything. Oh, look. There's your flowers.
Oh, look. Pink roses, a dozen of them, and they are perfection. Oh. They should have been yellow. They're yellow. They're yellow. They're yellow. Just like that. They're those magical kind of roses that just alter. They're a hologram. They're iridescent. No, I will accept those flowers. Thank you. I appreciate you. I really do. I appreciate you very much.
You're amazing. Keep going. Fuck
yeah,
people.
we all need to, right?
Yeah, man. Fuck people. You keep, you know what I mean? I'm not going out on the farm. I'm joking. I'm joking.
I'm joking. Look at these flowers. And they are yellow.
Good job, MJ.
Good job. Just like that. PA. PA got the flowers.
See, you're supposed to have the flowers. MJ, it ain't. Oh, see that?
I did.
Grace. We just talked about Grace, MJ. We just talked about it. I am. I actually, when you were talking about Grace, I was thinking about the song "Amazing Grace," right? Amazing Grace, how sweet the sound. Yeah. That saved a wretch like me.
That's right.
It saved a wretch like me because God gave me grace. As wretched as I am.
We're all wretched. We're all wretched. Some more wretched than others.
And flawed and crazy.
Right.
And you know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
God gave me grace, so we have to give each other grace. So how can people support you? How can people continue to support the work that you do with Yellow House and all things Hope McMath?
Thanks for that question. So Yellow House is still doing what we do. We're just doing it out on the street and in neighborhoods until we can reopen our space safely for the people who want to visit us. So, people engaging with us through our social media platforms, and we've got 3 beautiful and powerful exhibitions that are virtual right now. One, Magic, Mirth and Mortality, Musings on Black Motherhood, which centers the work of Shawana Brooks and some other brilliant Black creators in our community. An exhibition on Axe Handle Saturday that we did that sort of marries the history and experience of Mr. Rodney Hurst and others and links it with the current movement for racial justice happening in Jacksonville right now. And then another great exhibition of local designers, visual designers, again, the majority of them young Black designers who have created posters around. The show is called Sit In, Stand Up. And so it's really a visual language for this moment that we're in. So there are posters that deal with the pandemic, deal with voting, deal with Black Lives Matter, and it's beautiful and powerful. And so for me, my hope would that people would just breathe that work in, because a lot of love and work went into the creation of those exhibitions, even though they're being delivered slightly different than we're used to. I think just engaging with us in the ways that we do work, and all of us just sort of link arms and try to keep moving through this together, because I am interested in creating something very different on the other side of all this. So for me, I'm most excited about the people who want to link arms and do exactly that. Yeah. Like awesome. You.
Yes, count me in.
Yes.
We already have some stuff in the works. So.
We do.
Yes.
We do.
So be on the
Big
lookout.
Secrets. Be on the lookout.
This is not the last time you're going to see Love Reigns and Hope McMath together joining forces. So thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure y'all follow MPN Network, MJ Baker, and of course, please support Yellow House, Hope McMath, everything that Hope does. Go out there and pick some fruit. You know,
Join me
go
on
out
the
there,
farm.
join her on the farm. Don't come get me. It's hot, you know. No, I'm kidding. I would love to do that though. That would be awesome.
You better watch what you say.
So,
better watch what you say.
MJ, wanna go? Thank y'all. Listen, I appreciate y'all. Thank y'all for tuning into the Random Thoughts of Rain podcast. Peace.
Peace.
That was dope. Are we still? Hey, what's up, everybody? This is Love Reigns, and I am here to talk about fly socks and tees. Congratulations, first of all, Mr. Al, Pete, and the whole MPN family for 7 years of just awesomeness. I'm so happy to be a part of the MPN network. The Random Thoughts of Rain podcast is a podcast that I've been sitting on. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a while, and it actually came about from conversations between Nikki Giovanni and James Baldwin that I saw on YouTube. And I said, man, it would be really, really cool to be able to do something like that and have those kinds of conversations with today's artists and today's creatives. So that's what the Random Thoughts of Rain podcast is all about. I have an opportunity to talk to some of the creatives that I've been blessed to work with over the years, where we stand as creatives, you know. So it's an amazing time. I have such awesome conversations with all of these creatives, and just stay tuned because you never know who I'm going to talk to next.